Which American president was least guilty? Lincoln, of course, because he was in a Senate. Let's see if you can figure that one out. Let's get started today with America struggles with post-war issues. Concepts for the day. What was the role of Russia during World War I? What happened to Russia in 1917? We alluded to that already. What is communism? How does communism, the Soviet Union, and the Red Scare all relate to one another? Finally, how did the Red Scare affect labor unions, immigrants, and then provide some examples. Vocabulary: Red Scare, Palmer Raids, Sacco and Vanzetti, Communism, KKK, and we're going to the next page today. We end with the quota system. In today's video, we're going to start with Russia, and we'll rewind back to 1917 and discuss Russia as it is leaving World War I, which we already talked about. If you recall, Russia is an allied power. They are against Germany, but in 1917, there's a full-fledged revolution occurring in Russia. So the status of Russia in 1917, or leading up to 1917, is there is an industrial revolution occurring just the same as in the United States. It's a struggle once more between the new worker class and the higher up class with the robber barons, the captains of industry, and how many feel that they are being exploited. The worker class, that is. There is then a potential overthrow of the government led by Vladimir Lenin. And in the moment of this crisis, Russia is going to drop out of World War I. Vladimir Lenin is going to lead the Bolsheviks with this overthrow of the Russian government, and he is a big promoter of communism. He adopts this way of thinking, and it is very anti-capitalism. And because of that viewpoint, because this revolution is leading to an overthrow of the government, people in the United States have a very negative perception of communism and what's happening in Russia. This is a really big turning point for the United States, viewing communism as a very big danger to something like the American dream. Capitalism, republic, free market, at this point in history are very much at odds with socialism / communism. And because the United States is going through its own industrial revolution and has faced many of the same dilemmas, big, poor working class, and then very few captains of industry, robber barons, they see this as a threat to the American dream. This leads to a fear of communism in the United States, and the fear that communism and this mode of thinking will lead to an overthrow of the United States government. So, capitalism versus communism. This is the outlook between the two ideologies. Russia has accepted communism, albeit through a revolution, and the United States has an even bigger fear of communism having a place in the United States, and socialistic ideas are facing a backlash now that this revolution has occurred in Russia. So between communism developing in Russia, along with the U.S. just trying to distance itself from Europe and the war-torn continent and trying to stay away from all the struggles that exist there, the new foreign policy of the United States is one of isolationism, and all of this combined leads to, inside the United States, the first Red Scare, domestically what is the reaction inside the United States? So one of the first things that we can look at is nativism. Nativism has been around in the United States before. During this time, we see a resurgence. In the 1920s, it takes many forms of anti this or that. So it's very anti-immigrant because some of the more recent immigrants are coming over from Eastern Europe, Russia. That's problematic in people's eyes. It's anti-Catholic, it's anti-Black. We're going to see the rise of the KKK again. The government is going to be involved with nativist ideas, or at least thinking. The FBI is going to put a lot of focus on potential threats to the government or to the people. So they're looking to squash those threats. The Palmer raids are an example of that. The Palmer raids are going to hunt down political enemies. They're trying to figure out who is communist, and then they'll go ahead and take those people out one way or another. For example, if you are foreign born, there certainly is a possibility that you will be deported if there is any slight association that the government thinks they can make with communism. One other example that exists that's very well known is the Sacco and Vanzetti case. Sacco and Vanzetti are anarchists. They are tried, they are convicted, and then they are executed. Whether or not that is right or wrong, the big question about the whole case has to do with the evidence and why they were actually tried, convicted, and executed. Was it good evidence at the time? Many people felt it was very flimsy, but everything proceeded because the government was trying to solve the problem of the Red Scare. Are you kidding me? Let's focus on the immigration aspect of this Red Scare reaction to communism and the Russian Revolution. Immigration has a heavy focus because much of the immigration taking place coming into the United States is centered around that Eastern European area. Many of the immigrants at this time are coming over from Eastern Europe and Russia, and due to all the events that have taken place in Russia, the overthrow of the government, the revolution itself, and all that combined with the ideology of communism, this is what's putting a fear into many U.S. citizens. It's that fear and suspicion that communism is going to come in to the United States and topple it. So in reaction, aside from just nativist sentiments, we see a reaction to that through immigration laws. There's the Immigration Act of 1921 and 1924, but the purpose of these acts is to put a quota system in place to limit the number of immigrants coming in from particular parts of the world. That quota system certainly has an impact on not allowing too many people from Eastern Europe into the United States. That's all in reaction to the Red Scare. The video today is going to come to an end with us talking about labor unions. It's important to discuss labor unions in this case because of that capitalism and communism comparison that's at play here with the Red Scare, the United States, and the Soviet Union, the now Soviet Union. In the United States, labor unions had increased over time starting in the 1860s, and their purpose was to make the working class, to fight for the worker in the working class. Capitalism had come with some negative effects for the worker. We're talking about harsh conditions, low pay, and things of that nature that the progressive era is going to address. Those who are staunch capitalist believers, they certainly argue that that's just part of the market, and they can look back on social Darwinism, so on and so forth. Progressivism, labor unions, they're fighting for the worker. They're looking to even things out. That idea is very socialistic, and communism plays on socialist ideas. So, with the Russian Revolution coming about in 1917 and the overthrow of the government, there is a strong backlash on labor unions and what they are actually doing. Are labor unions actually trying to change the United States government, possibly overthrow it because of what the ideology can be compared to, socialism compared with communism? Or are they simply trying to help the worker? In many ways, it doesn't matter. There are comparisons that exist, and that's all that's needed to for people to make communist comparisons with labor unions and what their intentions are. Therefore, we see the end of the progressive era, which was hanging on by a thread in many ways due to World War I. And we're going to see now a decline in the number of labor unions that exist and other accomplishments that we might have seen had the progressive era continued as it had moved with such ferocity in the 1900s to the 1920s. That's it. We'll talk to you next time.